This is a story about this key. Can everyone see it? It's a slightly rusty old key, and it is the key to a story about something that never happened. So instead of talking about something that happened in Bolton, we're going to be talking about something that might have happened. It is a story about why and how Napoleon Bonaparte never moved to Bolton. And it's also the story about a Bolton citizen, a man named Samson Reeling Stoddard Wilder. If any of you have been to Bolton, you may have been up Wilder Road, and at the top of Wilder Road is the Wilder Mansion at 101 Wilder Road. SVS Wilder was a very prosperous merchant. He traded mostly to France, and this was during the War of 1812. So that was not easy because the British and the French were at war, and the British were trying to blockade trade going into the Atlantic ports of France. But Wilder was very successful, lived in Paris for quite a while, and became a friend of the Marquis de Lafayette, for one thing, and a great admirer of Napoleon Bonaparte, and quite a Francophile. He followed, of course, the Napoleonic Wars with great interest, and was back and forth between Bolton and Paris quite a lot. In Bolton, around 1814, he bought and expanded what is now called the Wilder Mansion, which is one of the magnificent old houses in Bolton, and had established quite a big estate there. In 1815, Napoleon, having come back from exile once out of the Elbe, was finally defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in Belgium. And it was a very final defeat. At that point, Wilder decided that he wanted to try to rescue Napoleon before he was sent into another further exile. And a biographer of Wilder wrote a fairly good account of what Wilder wanted to do. And he points out that it will be remembered that Mr. Wilder, from the constant shipments he had long made here of French goods, possessed peculiar facilities for anything of the kind. In other words, he had ships. He proposed that Napoleon, until reaching the coast, and this again is after Napoleon had been defeated at Waterloo, that Napoleon should disguise himself as the valet for whom he, Mr. Wilder, had already a passport. And these were apparently not easy to get. Then, on board an American ship, a hogshead, a large cask, would be prepared in which Napoleon could be concealed until beyond the limit of danger. In other words, if an English ship had captured the ship Napoleon was on, he would need to be well hidden until they could get away. Arrived in America, Mr. Wilder further proposed to take the emperor to his own country residence in Bolton, there to remain incognito at least 6 months. In other words, what do you do next with a former emperor? This scheme Napoleon seriously considered, and declared it feasible, but finally declined. To his honor be it said, because he would not desert friends who had been faithful to him through prosperity and adversity. He wished Mr. Wilder to arrange for their flight also. Mr. Wilder said Napoleon's own safety was all he could under Providence venture to secure at that time, that but one vessel could be cleared without attracting observation. Bonaparte refused to leave his followers. So he never actually got out of France, and at that point was exiled to St. Helena, where he died. One of Wilder's preparations for Napoleon was to build a cabin hidden in the woods on Wilder's extensive estate in Bolton to house his expected guest until the former emperor's future could be settled. Wilder had more than enough acreage of Bolton woods to build a small house well hidden. The cabin was called Tadmor, from the name of a desert refuge mentioned in the Bible. The Bolton Historical Society has what we call Napoleon's door key, the key to Tadmor. This was given to the society by the wife of a man who had worked at the Wilder estate, and certainly could have had access to the key. Looks like a very substantial key. When Napoleon failed to arrive, Tadmor was abandoned, and sometimes later, in 1890, it burned to the ground. We don't know whether it was used for anything ever after Napoleon didn't make it. In fact, not the earliest. Those of you who write poetry should know that there has been a poem written about Tadmor by a Bolton poet, Harriet Forbush, in 1917. And she ends, "Silence reigns here in the forest where the Tadmor's ashes lie, as the wood, broken by a string of music as a woodbird flutters by. While afar contending armies struggle on the soil of France, but Napoleon is sleeping, leads no more the swift advance. Yet the name is deathless ever, that resounded through the world, when he carried France to victory, while her flag was never furled." This was written, remember, during the First World War, when France was at war, when the fields of France were again crossed by war. And so all of this opens up all kinds of imagination of what might have happened. Suppose Napoleon had gotten to Bolton. Mm-hmm. He probably wouldn't have stayed there. But, well, unless he could have become select. That's what we all think. But he never held this key or turned it in the lock of Tadmor. But it was waiting for him. Wow. And I'm going to leave it here it isn't fragile, but and it may be picked up, but I'll leave it here for people to look at. And we've had it on display at Sawyer House for some time.
Is there anything on where the Tadmor buildings there now?
Alice? Alice?
Yeah, Alice, thank you.